Hello, and welcome to the Outdoorsy Diva podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, the Outdoorsy Diva. Thanks for joining. Hey there, adventurers. Thank you so much for joining this episode of the Outdoorsy Diva podcast. Today, we are continuing our very successful Black travel business owner series. And we have a special guest today, Sanja, Lioness, Macky. Sanja is the founder and leader of Bucket List Beast and also Mediocrity Escapologists. Now, y'all have to understand, we have adventure royalty in our midst. Like, Sanja is one of my travel adventure idols. She is an all-around badass. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell our listeners a little bit about what you do.
Okay, thank you for having me, Lauren, on the podcast. Okay, again, I'm Sonjia Lioness Macky, and I consider myself to be a very fearless, adventurous, travel-loving person who is out there just trying to live her best life. That's what it's all about for me, and that's actually what I try to help people do as well. So when I say fearless and adventurous, I mean I really push the envelope on that. I am really about just trying new things, having new experiences, and just not letting fear get in the way of what it is that I most want to do or accomplish in life. And that's something that I try to impart with, the people in my travel community, but also the women that I help to coach in my coaching business. It's just to not let fear stand in the way and to live your best life.
And she's not joking. When she says push the envelope, she pushes the envelope, and you all will hear some of the wild things that she's done. So tell us a little bit more about Bucket List Beast and what you do with that.
Okay, so Bucket List Beast is the movement that I created that is really around travel and adventure. Okay, and so it's my niche, my travel business niche, and there are a lot of Black travel groups and Black travel companies out there. And that's really the beautiful thing about it, is that it has really grown. The space has really increased, and there's room for everybody. If somebody really wants to travel, there's no reason why they can't find a group or a company that really caters to their particular niche and their particular interests. So for me, it's about off the beaten path travel. It's about very active type of adventurous activities. It's about bucket list activities, helping people check things off their bucket list. So we like to go hard on life. So that's why I call it Bucket List Beast, okay? Because we like to go hard on living life to the fullest. And so we push the envelope quite a bit. And I would say we're a lot more adventurous than the average traveler, and a lot more active than the average traveler. If you're interested in kind of hanging out on the beach for 5 days on end, we are not going to be the group for you. But if you like very active adventure, whitewater rafting, horseback riding, caving, hiking, we've done all sorts of things, hot air balloon ride, you name it, we've done it. So if you like that kind of activity on your travels, we're definitely the group for you.
And about how long have you had Bucket List Beast going?
For about 5 years now. So I actually started it when I was still working my corporate job. My background is in oil and gas. So I spent 10 years with ExxonMobil, and I spent approximately about 13 years or so with Royal Dutch Shell. So I resigned from Shell in 2016 because I wanted to pursue my purpose and live life with more passion and be completely 100% location independent so that I could travel, make money, help people all at the same time.
Wow. So not only are you fearless when it comes to adventure, but to step out and leave your corporate job and pursue your passion and start your business, that is not a small feat at all. That is not a small feat at all. So can you talk to us a little bit about what that was like? Because I remember when you were going through this and this was happening, I was like watching via social media as this unfolded.
Yes, yes, you're right. It is not a small feat. And I say that because in my other Facebook group, Mediocrity Escapologists, which is a women's only community, I created that specifically to help those women escape the corporate chains and create that purpose driven, passion filled life via their own businesses. And I will say that the number one thing that is getting in the way of living their best life is fear. Okay, fear. And also their biggest fear, there are a lot of fears. So there's fear of failure, there's fear of making mistakes, there's fear of leaving the known for the unknown, there's fear of leaving that corporate salary. And that is a huge one, leaving the stability or what they perceive as the stability and security of that corporate salary. And so what I try to get them to understand is like, look, first of all, there's no such thing as stability and security in a corporate salary. They could come in tomorrow and let you go tomorrow. Okay, so this is about not putting all your financial eggs in one basket. This is about creating multiple streams of income. This is about living with more purpose and more passion, about pursuing your divine assignments. Okay, so that's a huge part of what the women in the group are about. They feel, just as I felt, that there is more out there in the world for them. There's something else that they're supposed to be doing, a way in which they are supposed to be giving back to the world and creating impact and helping to change lives. And that is huge for them. That is probably more important even than the salary. When it comes to the point where you're willing to walk away, as I did, from a 6-figure salary and a 5-figure bonus every year, 6 weeks vacation, okay, from a company that is a Fortune Global top 10 company, in order to live your purpose-driven life. Okay, so yeah, that's it's pretty important. It's pretty huge.
And Sanja gets into a lot of this about her journey and how she got to this place in her book. She's an author as well. Her book is called Unleash the Beast, Leaving Corporate Life to Live Your Dream Life. And it's something that I'm currently reading. I didn't want to rush through it, so I've been taking it chapter by chapter. And I'm now on chapter 3, I believe, when you start to talk about turning your pain into power. So can you just speak a little bit on that concept?
Yes, yes, certainly. So yes, that's Unleash the Beast. So that was a book that I published last year. It's an ebook form on Amazon. And this year, I'm actually working to get that printed in hard copy form. So that's another goal that I have for this year. But it chronicles my journey, also a lot of the things that I learned along the way, the things that allowed me to be able to take that leap and to be able to resign from my corporate job so that I could step into entrepreneurship. Okay, so the first step I always see is that we have to get to a point where whatever is not working in our life, whatever the gap is, whatever the pain is, okay? And there's a lot of pain associated with when people are unhappy in their corporate jobs, okay? A lot of them want more freedom, whether it's to travel more and be location independent or to spend more quality time with their family. A lot of them are very stressed, and that's starting to show up in terms of physical symptoms. And I see that quite a bit with women in the group, okay? A lot of them just feel like they're not doing work that is meaningful and purposeful. So there are a lot of reasons why people might be in some type of pain, okay? But the reality is that, look, we can either stay in that pain and live out our life in that way, or we can choose to take responsibility for our own lives, for our own happiness, and start to turn that around by channeling that pain into power. Okay, let it become a motivator, a catalyst for change, such that we turn our lives around and we start to create the life that we truly want to live.
Yes, yes, yes. All the yeses, 1,000 times, yes. And this is something that I am actively working through for myself personally right now. Many of my listeners and followers of the blog, they know how I've been at this. And I preach really the same message that Sanja preaches about getting out of your comfort zone, putting yourself out there, having new experiences. And I have touched so many people. And I know that if I was doing this full time and giving as much effort as I'm putting into my daily corporate position, into my own stuff, how many more people could I impact? And so now that my son has graduated from college, I get to really sit down and figure this out. And Sanja is a big help in helping me to figure that out through her book. I'm also a member of that group. So I'm really looking forward to transforming my life through her teaching and her knowledge.
Yes. The reality is that as women, we hear a certain story, okay? What I call the fairy tale, okay? Even though it's not always a fairy tale. But, it's the story of how women are supposed to, quote unquote, live their lives. And, I've spoke about this in a recent series that I did, a masterclass 5-day series that I did within the group by video, where I talk about how I grew up, and it was expected that I would go to college, and it was expected that after that you get a quote good job, you get a good paying job. Okay. And that was, if you had that, then you were pretty much set. And of course, from a societal standpoint, you get married and you have kids, and that's your life. That is your life. You then work, you raise your kids, they go off and live their own lives, you retire, and that is your life. Okay. And so I wanted something completely different. I wanted something that looked different from that. And I always tell the people, the women in my group, it takes a lot of courage and strength to step out from societal expectations and live a life of your own creation versus the life that has been, set for you, the life that is expected of you, the life that society thinks and feels that you should live as a woman. It takes a lot to step away from that and say, no, I want to live something different. I choose something different for myself. And, I talked to them about how important that is. I shared about 2 weeks ago, I shared the results of a study. A nurse, she conducted a study. She worked with women and other people in the last stages of their life, okay? And she did a study on what were their biggest regrets as they looked back at this last stage of their life, getting ready to die. What is the biggest regret of my life? Okay. And so, of course, it was things like, I wish I had spent more time with my loved ones. I wish I didn't work so much, that sort of thing. But the number one regret that people had at this last stage of their life, as the curtain is getting ready to close and there is no more time to change anything, is that they did not live the life that they wanted to live. They lived the life that someone else wanted them to live. Okay. And they recognized that it was either by conscious choice that they allowed that to happen, or they did not do anything to stop that from happening. Okay, so that's a pretty tough pill to swallow in that last stage of your life when you're looking back and do you have any regrets, and asking yourself that question. And they did. That was their biggest regret. And so what I aim to do with the women in the group is, you don't want to be here. Okay, you don't want to be in that position looking back at the life you could have lived, the life you were supposed to live, but you didn't. Okay, because you let fear rob you of your destiny.
Wow. And that is powerful. So, and that's a great segue. So, talking about, your end of life and how people look back at their lives with, regret of what they didn't do. A lot of that has fueled, your reason for even having a bucket list. So, can you talk to us about how you got to that place of having a bucket list and why you think it's important for people to have a bucket list and to execute it?
Okay. Well, it really gets down to the fact that what we write down is what we accomplish. I mean, it says so even from a spiritual standpoint, write it down, make the vision plain. Okay. We do that with a lot of things. We do that with our grocery list. We do that with our to-do list. Okay. If there our Christmas list, if there's something that we want to remember, the honey-do list, okay, we write it down. Okay, because writing down just takes it to a different level where it seems more real, it seems more tangible. It is something that we really want to accomplish. And of course, in this day and age of technology, we may not be writing it down with pen and paper, but we are capturing it in some way. Okay, so I was always about that because I had so many things that I wanted to do and accomplish in life that I couldn't keep it all in my head straight. So I needed to write it down, and I needed to start to keep that list. Okay. And that list is, oh my God, that is probably one of the biggest bucket lists you will probably see. Okay. I'm actually revamping it now with the course of my website, which is going to be revamped and launched hopefully soon. Okay. But it has various categories. So it is not just about travel. It also includes things like There's a category for paying it forward and doing things for other people, like volunteer work, for example. There is a category for growth and improvement of self. Okay, so things that I have wanted to accomplish for myself from a growth standpoint, or just from a personal development standpoint. And so, for example, the book was one of those items in that category. So there's a lot of things there, and I tell people that your bucket list is your own. It doesn't have to compare to anyone else's. That sometimes people get caught up in that. Well, mine is not as adventurous. I don't have all these things like jumping off of buildings and all those things. And it doesn't have to be that. Okay, a bucket list is simply the things that you want to accomplish in life, the things that are meaningful to you. Okay, and it can be much larger than just a travel list. Okay, although mine definitely does include travel, and it includes a lot of crazy adventures that I've done over the years, like wrestling with crocodiles and running with the bulls in Spain, bungee jumping, skydiving. So just a number of the things that I've done. Eating crazy things like dog meat and goat testicles and sheep penis, and just a lot of the things that I've done.
I told y'all she is adventure royalty, and now you see why we are such kindred spirits and why I just loved her from the first time we ever interacted online, because y'all think that I'm crazy. No. Sanja has got me beat. Okay, you have to tell us about the wrestling with crocodiles.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty crazy. That actually took place in Colorado. Okay. It was actually alligators, sorry, instead of crocodiles. But, the funny thing was that I did it with 5 other people, and all of us had flown into Colorado from Louisiana and Texas to do this. Okay. So you actually start with the little babies first, I would say, babies to 3 feet. And, if you do well with that, then you graduate to the alligators between 3 feet and 6 feet, okay, which are actually ones that are probably pretty dangerous because they're quick, because they're small and quick. Okay. Then if you do well with that, if you catch one of those and you're good with that, then you graduate to those that are between 6 feet and 15 feet. Okay. So that involved us taking off our shoes and going into a big lake of water that probably had some 60 something alligators in it between 6 feet and 15 feet in very murky water that came up to my waist. And I'm 6 feet 2 inches tall. Okay, so imagine that. Okay, and our guy told us, keep your bare feet close to the ground because you don't want to put your feet in anybody's mouth. Certainly we did not. Okay, so here, imagine that you're walking in water, murky water, and feeling things walk, kind of beside you. And he said that, he told us, if you feel anything swim beside you, make like a tree and don't move. Okay, you don't have to tell me twice. Okay, so that happened. And the idea was for us to find an alligator that we, quote, liked, to put a lasso around its neck and to pull it onto land, to wrestle and lasso it and pull it onto land. Okay, so I found one that I sort of liked. It was a 10-footer, and he swam away from me into a hole that was in the embankment underwater. Okay, so here I am, picture this, I'm filling up his tail, feeling his hind legs, moving up his body with my hands. My face is mere inches from the surface of the water. I feel his forearms. Then I'm at the neck. Okay, and I'm wrapping the rope around this neck, thinking, how crazy is this? This thing could turn around at any minute and snap my head off. But that's what I was doing. Okay, and so then after I had the lasso around the neck, I slowly pulled him out of the hole. Okay, and gave it a little bit of rope because I didn't want him right next to me, and then kind of led him through the water to the embankment. And everything was cool and fine until I started to try and pull him on land. Then it started thrashing and cutting up, and I needed 2 guys to come and help me. And the 3 of us pulled it onto land, at which point I hurried up and sat on its back and put my hands on top of its head to try to use the pressure to keep it still, okay, with my body and with my hands, okay. At one point, it got enough leverage that it did a 180-degree roll on me, actually 360, okay, and it threw me off of its back into the water, and turned and snapped its jaws at me. And luckily, the guys were still holding the rope, else I might be missing a limb or something to this day. Yeah.
My heart is beating so fast. And
It was pretty crazy.
let's
It
be
was pretty crazy.
clear. There were no taped mouths in this episode of
No,
Sanja the Crocodile Hunter.
no, none. These, I mean, 60 something alligators between 6 and 15 feet long. So here I am with a 10-footer. Okay. So there's a little groove right under their lips. Okay. Towards where, their mouth, the groove. And so I'm sticking my hands right in that little groove so that I could pull the jaws back so we can get a great picture of that. Okay. With the mouth open and the teeth showing and everything. It was just crazy. When I look back on it, it was just crazy. But I did it, and I flew into Colorado expressly to do that.
And that sounds crazy to me because you're from the bayou. You're from Louisiana. You had to go all the way to Colorado to wrestle an alligator?
I did. I did. That's the only place that of course, I guess you could always go out to the swamp and find you a wild one and kind of take your chances with that. But yeah, this is the only place that allows the public to do that, that helps the public to do that.
Wow.
The only place in the world that helps them to do that. Of course, you'll see different shows where, they'll have the alligator and people will sit on their backs and kind of take pictures with them. This is like the only place where we went into the water, okay, got our own alligator, put a lasso around its neck. We did everything ourselves, okay, pulled it out of the water, everything, okay, yeah.
That's amazing. So tell us about some of the trips that you have lined up with Bucket List Beasts for this year.
Okay, so I've been hosting trips for about 5 years now. Okay, and we do a variety of different trips a year, several trips a year. Our signature trip is the mystery trip and the glamping trip, the Girls Gone Glamping trip. So with the Girls Gone Glamping trip, it's sort of like you being outdoorsy. It was about getting women outside, getting them to see some of the natural beauty of a lot of our American landmarks here, some of our great national parks. So Yellowstone, Glacier, Bryce and Zion. We're going to be going to the Smoky Mountains this year. Next year, we're going to be going to the Grand Canyon. So, it was about really getting them outdoors, but recognizing, of course, that we don't always like to rough it. So we do glamping instead, where we get to stay in tents that have beds, that have showers, some of the little creature comforts, so we're not totally roughing it. Okay, so that's a trip that I host every year, and we just change the locations and go to different places. Okay, the other signature trip is the mystery trip, and that's actually where I plan the whole trip, and the guests do not know where they're going or where they're staying or what they're going to be doing until they arrive at the airport and open the envelope. Okay, and that's where they find out where they're getting ready to jet off to. And so some of the places that we have been in the past, we have been to Santiago and Easter Island, Chile. We have been to La Paz and the salt flats of Bolivia. We have been to, last year, this past November, we went to Chiang Mai, Thailand, and we also went to Laos. We did a cross-country exploration of Laos. That was our main location. And that was the first two-country trip that I did. Okay, so we go a lot of different places. Okay, and I actually for a lot of the people, they want it to be new passport stamps, which is something that I ensure before they book the trip. Make sure that they have not been to that particular location before, that particular country. And so it's really exciting. We do a lot of great activities, and they get the bonus of just going to the airport and not knowing where they're going and taking a trip, just a major travel surprise.
And
Okay.
it's really cool because if you join Sanja's group, Bucket List Beast, leading up to the trip, she's giving teasers and clues about where they're going. And so you kind of get to participate even if you're not going. Her glamping trip itineraries are amazing, and it has just always been a matter of dates where I have yet to be able to go on one of her glamping trips, but it is going to happen. I am putting this in the universe. Come hell or high water, I'm going on one of these trips, so it's got to
Yes.
happen.
We would love to have you. We're actually going to be leaving on one in May, and this one we're not doing a national park, but we're going to be rafting, whitewater rafting every day. It's a whitewater rafting trip. And then every evening, we're going to make camp, okay, on the banks. And we're going to have gourmet cuisine and gourmet wines. And they're going to set our tents up with bedding and pillows and all that sort of thing. So we'll be glamping at night. And so I'm really looking forward to that one. That'll be a really great trip. Okay. And some of the other ones that we have coming up we'll be going to the Galapagos Islands. We will be headed to Antarctica again in the year 2021. Next year, we have several trips that are already out. We're going to be going to Tasmania. We're going to be going to Bhutan, to Tiger's Nest. We're going to be doing a trip to Vietnam and Cambodia. That's a 2-country trip. Of course, we have our mystery trip next year and our mystery trip later this year. And we just have a lot going on. So again, if people are interested in, I think there are a lot of travel groups out there that will take you to some of the, pretty known destinations. Like, for example, South Africa, which is very nice. I've been there before. Tanzania, Bali, Indonesia, just places that people tend to go. But, I look at our group as a group that is going to get you some places that a lot of people have not been. So if you're into having those bragging rights and going places that most people aren't going, like Bhutan or, some of those places, then yeah, you need to join us over in Bucket List Beast.
Absolutely. And as you can hear, these are some out of this world itineraries. You are not going to get this type of trip from doing Priceline or Expedia or Groupon getaways. This is definitely light years above those kinds of trips. And so that's a great benefit that Sanja offers. So I know people are hearing these destinations and these itineraries, and they're probably thinking, this has to cost an arm and a leg. So, I'm of the belief that travel is what you make it. And if it's a priority for you, then you prioritize it into your life, and that includes your budget. So talk to us a little bit about what people can expect in terms of pricing for some of your trips and itineraries.
I am of the same mindset. Okay. So I remember back when I was in my corporate job and people would always ask, and we hear this a lot in the travel community where people ask, well, what kind of work do you do? And what they're really getting at, what they really want to know is, how are you able to afford to travel like this? What kind of money do you make? What kind of job do you have that allows you to travel like this? Okay. And what I always tell them is that it doesn't matter. You could have the exact same job that I have, doing the exact same work that I do, making the exact same salary that I do. It would not matter. You still might not travel the way that I travel. Why? Because it may not be a priority to you the way it is to me. To me, it is less about money and it is more about prioritization, because I always feel, and I've always felt this way, you make the time and you find the money for the things that are important to you. I mean, think about it. We always do, no matter what it is. We make the time and we find the money for what we deem to be important. And travel is no different. Okay. So from that respect, it's a matter of priorities. And that's the way I've always approached it. Okay. So I will readily tell anyone, I am not the low cost provider. I am not the cheapest and the lowest. Okay. So for me, it is about bringing unique experiences to people. It's about taking them to off the beaten spot, off the beaten path destinations. It's about helping them to have travel adventures and bucket list adventures. Okay. So yeah, it's not going to be the cheapest thing out there. I always say it's not for the glitch fare crew. Okay. And by glitch fare crew, I mean the people who always think of things in terms of the lowest, cheapest fare. Okay, which is consistent with getting glitch fares with airlines and that sort of thing. Okay, so I am about bringing the best experience I possibly can to people. It's not going to be the most expensive either. So I would say that our trips have ranged anywhere from maybe 1,500 or so for some of our glamping trips, which will be 4 or 5 days over, here domestically at some of the national parks as we go glamping, to as much as $5,000 or a little over that for the example, the 2-country trip that we did this past November, where we went through Chiang Mai in Thailand and then a cross-country exploration of Laos. We probably stayed in at least 7 different destinations, 7 different accommodations on that trip. And we did everything from caving to zip lining over a valley in the jungle, to whitewater rafting, to hiking, to temples, to very cultural engagements and interactions with the locals, going into their houses, cooking with them, eating with them, okay, a religious ceremony with the monks that, things that a lot of tourists are just not going to be privy to. Okay. So yeah, when it comes to things like that, I feel it's worth it. I feel it's worth it to truly explore a destination and to have those types of experiences and adventures that you're just not going to find just anywhere.
And for the most part, does this include meals and activities? What doesn't it include?
Okay, so for the mystery trip, everything is included, including the airfare, because we booked that. I booked that because obviously we can't have the person knowing where they're going by booking their own airfare. Okay, so what they would do is everything would be included in that price. So for example, that trip in November was a 2 country trip that was about a little over $5,000, but it also included their international airfare as well as airfare within the country. Okay, within the countries. Okay, so also included activities in all of our various accommodations. Okay, with all the other trips aside from the mystery trip, all activities will be included. A good portion of food will be included, and that will be stipulated within the itinerary how much of food will be included. Okay, airfare will be the main thing that will not be included. So again, the prices will vary. So for example, the domestic glamping trips that we go on that may start around $1,500, airfare would not be included with that. Okay, but everything else, a lot of the accommodation will be included, and a lot of the food and activities will be included.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you have been all over the world, literally. You mentioned Antarctica. You've been to some really, really cool destinations. What is the one place that you haven't visited yet or that you're most looking forward to getting to?
Oh, wow. Let's see. That is tough because, I have hit a lot of my major places. I've been to all 7 continents. I've traveled to all 50 states, and I have hit 77 different countries. 78 will be next week when we go to Iran. Okay, that's actually a group trip that I'm hosting, and a lot of people are looking forward to that, the people that are on it, because that is kind of one of those forbidden, taboo type places. And of course, because it was considered taboo and forbidden, that's exactly why I considered it. Because again, that adventurous type of attitude that I have. Okay. Um, but I grew up as a child watching Discovery Channel, watching, Animal Planet, National Geographic, and what I always saw was Africa. Okay. And I grew up saying, I'm going to get there. That's where I'm going to go. The Serengeti, the Masai Mara, that's where I'm going to go. So that was ingrained in me, in my child's mind. Okay. And, fortunately for me, in 2005, I went on a 3-week safari to Kenya and Tanzania, where I was able to check off the Serengeti and Ngorongoro crater and the Masai Mara. I was able to see this with my own eyes and experience this childhood dream come to life for myself. So Africa always had a very special place in my heart because of that. Okay, Botswana, Namibia, these were all places that I would watch on TV, and so they all had a very special place for me. And in fact, when I left my corporate job in 2016, a couple of months later, I went on a 5-week safari, a 5-country trip back to Africa, where I was then able to check off Namibia, and also Mozambique, also Botswana, places like I went gorilla trekking in Rwanda. So I was able to check off several other countries on that particular list. But Africa has a very special place for me, and that was sort of my #1 bucket list destinations, which I've been able to check off. Other ones include Australia, New Zealand, which I've also been able to check off. So, it's hard to say because most of the places that I've always wanted to go, I have been. Okay, but I will say a place that's on my list that I have not been yet that I'm really looking forward to going is Madagascar. Okay, so that's a place in Africa that I'm really looking forward to going that I have not been yet. I have not been to a lot of Scandinavian countries, so Norway, Sweden, Denmark. Some of those places are places I have not been as yet either, and so I'm looking forward to that as well. Okay.
Okay, those are actually on my list too because I'm the world's biggest Christmas nerd. And so they have awesome accommodations with like real Christmas and sleeping in glass igloos and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yes, Finland. I've been there. I slept in the glass igloos in Finland because well, accommodations is a huge thing for me. So I've done the tree houses. I've done the glass igloo. I've done the ice hotel. I've done the underwater overwater bungalows. I've done the underground hotels. I've done the salt hotel. So that's actually a category in my bucket list. Very unique accommodations.
See, she's amazing. So how have you seen this market with Black travel evolve over the last few years?
It has just been crazy, the growth, and and this is the ironic thing, though. This is what I tell people. Okay, within our travel networks, and within our networks, we know a lot of the same people. We travel in a lot of the same circles. So it seems like everybody is traveling, but when you really look at it, everybody is not. And we still represent probably a very small single-digit percentage of overall Black people, the Black population. Okay, so everybody isn't traveling, even though it seems like everybody is starting to do more of that. Okay, so I think there's a lot of room for growth. Even though we've seen a lot of growth, there is definitely a lot more room for growth. Okay, again, there's a plethora of different niches and different travel groups and companies to cater to every type of traveler. I have a friend who has a luxury travel company. So she's the one who does like champagne, cognac, the rooftop brunches and that sort of thing. I have another friend who has a travel company. Hers is around culinary type of aspects into wine and food and that sort of thing. I have another friend who has a company strictly geared towards women travel. Okay, so when a lot of women are afraid to go out there and travel solo, her company helps them to get out there and with other women travelers. Okay, so there's a plethora of groups out there. The cheaper option. People are interested in more the backpacking type of budget. Okay, there's a plethora of things out there. So that's what I love, is that there's been a lot of growth. There's been a lot of increase, a lot of variety in terms of bringing different interests to the people who want to travel, and bring those types of services to people. Okay, but what I do see also is that there's still a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear, okay, with women in terms of solo travel, in terms of traveling overseas. And I'm not just talking about in the travel community itself, because you do still see some of those fears in the travel community, some of those same limitations. Like, for example, women who feel, well, I can't really go to Bora Bora by myself or with my friends. That's a romantic place. I need to go with my partner. And, my reality is, no, you really don't, because, you can romance yourself and just have a great time, some quiet time for you, just to revel in you, which is actually what I did. Okay, when I went to the Maldives, I went by myself, and it was just me treating myself, loving on myself, dating myself, and just giving myself the best of what is out there. Okay, and not waiting on somebody else to come along for me to justify or validate it. Okay, so I feel that there are a lot of limitations still, even within the travel community and outside the travel community, with a lot of people who have yet to travel, even more so. So we still have a lot of work to do in terms of changing mindsets and getting people to just be more open and be more receptive to getting out there and traveling.
And that is so right on time. The last two podcast episodes have been dedicated to talking about solo travel as a woman, why it's so important, how it can change your life. And then the episode from yesterday was all about staying safe and how to take precautions so that you don't have those fears, and planning for things so that you can have that freedom. So when you talk about fear, what is some advice that you have for our listeners in getting over that fear?
Well, it's interesting because, it's part of what actually, the fear that I was seeing with women in the travel space was actually sort of what morphed into me wanting to coach women and deal with fear on a larger level. Because what I was seeing is that, it's not just fear. like of traveling overseas, even at home, they're afraid to go to a movie by themselves, or they're afraid to go to a restaurant by themselves and be seen having dinner alone, And it's like, why is that? Why do you put off these things and these experiences and you're not willing to do any of those things simply because you have no one to go with you? Because I can tell you, if I had waited for someone to go with me, I wouldn't have seen and visited half the countries that I have been to. I would still be waiting if I had waited. Okay. So that's sort of my philosophy there. Okay. So it's really about addressing that fear. And what I tell people is that, look, fear is like a monster that lives in your head. It's illogical and irrational in a lot of ways. Okay. It takes on this energy and it starts to grow, and people start thinking all these crazy scenarios that 99% are not even going to happen. And it's like, whoa, girl, bring it down a notch, like let's get grounded here. Okay. And it's like getting yourself grounded and really getting logical and rational about what am I really afraid of here? What's really going to happen here? Okay. And how can I mitigate that? And I often compare it to when I was in my oil and gas corporate jobs. One of the things that we had to do, obviously, as we go out and do new projects, there are a lot of concerns, there are a lot of risks, a lot of things could go wrong from an environmental standpoint, from a hazardous waste standpoint, from an effect to the community standpoint, from a financial standpoint. So things we don't want to happen. Okay, so how do we then manage that? Okay, we would do a risk management plan. Let's sit down, let's think about all the things that could happen. And if that does happen, what can we do? Okay, how can we even prevent it from happening in the first place? But if it does happen, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle it? Who can we call? What can we implement? What can we execute? Okay, and that helps us to get some control over the situation. That helps us to feel a little bit more like it's not something that's out of our control. It helps us to bring it down to a level that's more logical, more rational. We can wrap our hands around it. Okay, and when we do that, it helps to dissipate the fear a bit, because then it's something that we can sort of manage. Okay, does that make sense?
Absolutely. And those are some of the exact same things that I talk about in that episode when we're talking about, your safety. And in that blog post, the exact same things. You plan for what you can plan for. And if you
Mm-hmm.
have a plan, then you can feel a lot better about it. So tell people how they can get a hold of your book.
Okay, all right. What you can do, actually, we would love to have you join either of the Facebook groups. So, Bucket List Beasts, which is a co ed group of men and women, travelers and adventurers, okay, and Mediocrity Escapologists, which is a community for women only, women who want to live their best life, but also women who are really trying to leave corporate so they can start those entrepreneurial businesses. That is definitely one of our focuses there, okay? So, feel free to join either of the groups to find us, okay? And should you join the Mediocrity Escapologist group, make sure that you then message me, okay, and let me know that you want to receive a copy, an e-copy of my book, and I will send you a free copy of that book, which chronicles my journey, okay, from the corporate life to living my dream life.
And I will have links to both of the Facebook groups and all of that information down in the show notes for our listeners. Sanja, it has been such a pleasure to have you. I've been wanting to talk to you and interview you for the longest since I first was introduced to you. You have impacted my life personally. I just want you to know that. And I know that when people listen to this episode, you're going to impact theirs as well. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, make sure you subscribe to the Outdoorsy Diva podcast. Be sure to check out Misadventures of an Outdoorsy Diva blog on outdoorsydiva.com. You can also keep up with me and my adventures, so check out all of my social channels. Find Outdoorsy Diva on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest.